Hello, my name is Sarah. Today, I am the CEO of a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I live in a glass apartment high above the city. I am by every measure a success, but I was not raised to be a success. I was raised to be a disappointment. I was raised to be a warning. Before we move forward, show a little love. Please take a second to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment where in the world you're listening from. I love seeing how far my stories travel. My family, the Jensens, did not believe in dreams. They believed in dirt. They believed in sweat. They believed in the heavy, aching tiredness you feel after a 12-hour day of physical labor. My father, Frank, and my mother, Mary, owned a hardware store, Jensen's Hardware. It was their church. It was a dusty, cluttered place that smelled like sawdust, metal, and fertilizer. To them, hard work was something you could touch. It was calloused hands. It was a sore back. I was not like them. I was not a disappointment because I was lazy. I was a disappointment because I was soft. I was a book-smart kid. While they were stocking shelves, I was in the back room reading. While they were balancing their messy, handwritten ledgers, I was teaching myself how to code on an old donated computer. My parents looked at me with a kind of deep, profound suspicion. My father, Frank, called me the professor. He did not mean it as a compliment. All those books, he would say, his voice full of scorn. They are making your hands soft, Sarah. You cannot build a life on pointless ideas. My mother, Mary, was just as bad. She would watch me studying for my exams. You think you are better than us with your fancy words? She would ask. Real life is not in those books. Real life is hard. It is about survival. Their favorite word was survival. To them, survival meant working at the hardware store, just like they did. It meant never leaving. It meant never dreaming. The breaking point came at my high school graduation. I had done it. I had worked so hard. I was not just graduating. I was the valedictorian. And I had received a scholarship, a very good one, to a university in another state. It was for computer science. It was my escape. It was my whole future. The scholarship covered 75% of my tuition. It was a miracle. But it was not everything. I still needed money for books, for a dorm room, for food. I still needed my parents to co-sign a student loan. That night, I sat them down at the kitchen table. The same table where they counted their greasy dollar bills. I was so nervous. My hands were shaking. I laid out the papers, the acceptance letter, the scholarship award, the loan application. This is it, I said, my voice small. This is my chance. I need your help. I need you to co-sign the loan. My father looked at the papers like I had just put a dead animal on his table. He did not read them. He just pushed them away. College, he said. He spat the word. Pointless! A piece of paper does not mean anything. It is a 4-year vacation for rich kids. We are not rich kids, Sarah. We are workers. But Dad, this is for computer science. This is the future. I can get a real job. I can help. Help? My mother interrupted. Her voice was sharp. You can help right now. You graduated. You are an adult. You can start full-time at the store on Monday. We need you to run the register. I could not breathe. No, I whispered. I am not working at the store. I am going to college. My father stood up. His chair scraped the floor. The sound was violent. No, he said. His voice was quiet, and that was always scarier than his yelling. You are not. We will not pay for this. We will not sign for this. This fantasy. It stops now. You have 2 choices. You can stay here in this house, and you can pull your weight at the store, or you are on your own. I looked at my mother. Her face was hard. She was a wall. Your father is right, she said. We are not going to support this. If you think you are so smart, then go. Go and survive on your own. Survive on your own. That was the phrase. That was the curse. It was the end of the world. I stared at them. They were not my parents. They were my jailers. And they were angry that the prisoner was trying to leave. I did not cry. I did not yell. I felt something break. The last thin thread that connected me to them. It snapped. Fine, I said. I stood up. I will. I went to my room. I packed 1 small bag. I had $500 in my bank account. Money I had saved from tutoring other kids. Money they did not know about. I walked out of my room. They were both in the living room, watching television. They did not even look at me. I walked out the front door. I walked to the bus station. I bought a 1-way ticket to a state I had never been to. As the bus pulled away, I looked back at the hardware store. Its lights were off. It looked like a tomb. I was 18 years old. I had no home. I had no family. I was completely, terrifyingly on my own. The next 4 years were not just hard. They were a living nightmare. I arrived in a new city with one bag and $500. I knew no one. The university was huge. My scholarship covered tuition, but it did not cover life. I got a tiny, dark basement apartment. It smelled like mold. I immediately got 2 jobs. From 5 in the afternoon until 11 at night, I was a waitress at a greasy diner. I would run home, sleep for 4 hours, and then go to my other job. From 4 in the morning until 8 in the morning, I was a janitor. I cleaned the university's empty classrooms. I would scrub floors, and then, at 8:30, I would sit in one of those same classrooms trying to stay awake for my calculus lecture. I was not a student. I was a machine. I was always hungry. I lived on burnt coffee from the diner and stale bread I took from the cafeteria trash. I was so lonely. I would see other kids in my classes, laughing, wearing new clothes, talking about going home for the weekend. I had no home. I had no one to call. My parents. I did not exist to them. I had tried to call once in my first month. My mother picked up. She heard my voice. She said, "We are very busy, Sarah." And she hung up. I was failing. Not because I was not smart. I was failing because I was exhausted. My body was giving up. I remember one night in my second year. It was 3 in the morning. I was in the diner. It was my break. I was in a back booth. I had my textbook open, but I could not read the words. My eyes were burning. I had 75 cents in my pocket. My rent was due. My electric bill was late. I was going to be kicked out of school. I was going to be homeless. I had failed. I put my head down on the sticky diner table, and I gave up. I was done. My father was right. I could not survive. The professor was a failure. I sat there and I saw my father's face in my mind. I saw him laughing, his voice full of scorn. Survive on your own. That curse, that terrible cold phrase. And then something inside me. It did not just snap, it ignited. The exhaustion did not go away, but a new feeling came. A deep, cold, burning rage. You want me to survive? I whispered to the empty diner. You monsters! I will not just survive. I will win. I will build an empire. I will become so successful that your tiny, dusty little world will look like a speck of dirt. I will survive, and I will make you watch. That night, the anger, it became my fuel. It was better than coffee. It was better than sleep. I did not quit. I went to the dean of my department. I did not ask for help. I made a proposal. I told him I was failing because I was working 40 hours a week. I am your best student, I told him. My voice was not shaking. But I am also your poorest. Give me a real job, a job that matters. He was a kind man, a professor named Dr. Allister. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw my grades from my first year. He knew I was not lying. He did not give me a job. He got me a paid internship, a small new tech startup, Apex. They were working on logistics software. They needed a coder, a cheap one. That internship saved my life. It was real work. It was in my field. I was not just a janitor anymore. I was a developer. I worked for them 20 hours a week. They paid me enough to quit the diner. I still cleaned in the mornings, but I had time to study, and I had time to think. The company, Apex, was run by 2 smart guys who had a great idea, but they did not know how to make it work. Their code was a mess. I did not just do my job. I did their jobs. In my spare time, I rewrote their entire platform. I made it faster. I made it smarter. I made it work. I graduated with high honors. The owners of Apex did not just offer me a job. They offered me a partnership. Sarah, they said, we do not know what you are, but this company is nothing without you. We will give you 30%. Please stay. I stayed. For the next 10 years, I did not just work. I built that company from a 3-person startup in a garage into a global logistics powerhouse. Apex became my company. I became the CEO. We designed software that changed how the entire world shipped packages. We went public. The day our company hit the stock market, I stood on the balcony in New York City. I watched our name light up in giant letters. I was not the girl in the diner anymore. I was not the professor. I was a self-made CEO. And my personal net worth, after the stock offering, was well over $50 million. I had survived. I had not spoken to my parents in over a decade. Not one word. They did not call me. I did not call them. I did not know if they were alive or dead. And I did not care. I had built my own family, my company, my team. And then Forbes magazine did a cover story. It was a picture of me, standing in my glass office. The title was Survive on Your Own, How Sarah Jensen Went from Homeless Student to Tech Mogul. The article told my story. It mentioned my past. It mentioned my humble roots and my estranged family. I knew they would see it. I knew in my bones that the ghosts were about to walk out of the grave. I did not get a phone call. I did not get a congratulations daughter card. I got a certified letter. It was delivered to my office by a courier. It was from a law firm I had never heard of in my old hometown. I opened it. My hands were perfectly steady. I was not being congratulated. I was being sued. I stared at the paper. Frank and Mary Jensen vs. Sarah Jensen. The amount they were suing me for, $5 million. I read the claim. I had to read it twice because it was so insane, so arrogant that my brain could not process it. They were suing me for parental investment and support. They were not claiming I had stolen from them. They were not claiming I owed them a loan. They were claiming that my entire success was built on their foundation. Their lawsuit said that their tough love parenting, their moral guidance, and their unwritten contract of familial support were the reason I was successful. They claimed that their decision to cut me off and force me to survive on my own was a deliberate parenting strategy designed to build character. They had not just disowned me. They were now taking credit for my survival, and they wanted to be paid. $5 million, a reasonable finder's fee, their lawyer called it, for the success they had created. I did not get angry. I did not cry. I did not feel anything. I felt that old familiar cold rage. The rage from the diner. It was back. Okay, I whispered to my empty office. You want to talk about investment? Let's talk about investment. I buzzed my assistant. Get me my personal lawyer, I said. And get me my chief financial officer, now. My lawyers were stunned. This is frivolous, Sarah, my head lawyer Ben told me. It is insulting. We can have this thrown out in 10 minutes. No, I said. I do not want it thrown out. I want to go to court. I want them to stand up in public and make this claim. Ben looked at me. He saw the look in my eyes, the one I got before I was about to destroy a competitor. Okay, Sarah, he said, a slow smile spreading on his face. Let's go to court, but we are not just going to defend. We are going to countersue. The pre-trial deposition was a circus. My parents showed up. They looked older. They looked tired. The hardware store, it had not been kind to them, but their eyes were the same. Hard, greedy, and full of that same smug certainty. They looked at me, in my expensive suit, like I was still that ungrateful professor. Their lawyer was a cheap shark in a bad suit. Ms. Jensen, he said, my clients raised you. They fed you. They clothed you for 18 years. They gave you the grit you needed to succeed. They are entitled to a share. $5 million is very, very reasonable. You are right, I said. Everyone in the room stopped. My parents looked at each other, smiling. They thought I was giving in. You are right, I said again. Family is about what you owe. It is about paying your debts. So I will see you in court. I am very, very excited to discuss all of our shared debts. Their lawyer was confused. He did not understand. He just smiled. We will see you then, Miss Jensen. Yes, I said. You will. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was small. It was exactly like I remembered from my old life. Dusty, smelling of old paper. My parents, Frank and Mary, were there. They looked smug. They were sitting in the front row, whispering to each other. They looked at me as I walked in. They looked at me like I was a rebellious child who was finally about to be punished. They truly, honestly believed they were going to win. They believed they were entitled to my money. Their lawyer, Mr. Barnes, stood up. He gave a big, emotional, ridiculous speech. He talked about family values. He talked about the sacred duty of a child to repay the parents who had sacrificed everything for them. He painted a picture of my parents as two hard-working, simple people who had been betrayed by their cold, unfeeling, rich monster of a daughter. They gave her life, he boomed. They gave her a home. They gave her the moral fiber to succeed. And now she sits in her glass tower, forgetting the people who built the foundation. My father, Frank, even shed a fake tear. It was a perfect performance. The judge, a sharp-eyed older woman, looked at him, unimpressed. Thank you, counselor, she said. She looked at my lawyer. Mr. Stone, your response? My lawyer, Ben Stone, a man who was paid more in an hour than my parents made in a month, stood up. He was calm. He was precise. Your Honor, he said, his voice quiet. My client, Ms. Jensen, agrees. Family is about contracts. It is about paying what you owe. And it is about survival. He placed a large, heavy binder on the judge's desk. My client's parents, he said, are suing her for $5 million for their parental investment. A fascinating claim. But it has one problem. It is based on a lie. My parents' lawyer jumped up. Objection! He is slandering. Sit down, counselor, the judge said. I want to hear this. What lie, Mr. Stone? The lie, Ben said, is that my client's success was built on their foundation, when in fact, their survival has been built on hers. My parents stopped smiling. They looked confused. Ben continued. 10 years ago, a small, independent hardware store in Michigan, Jensen's Hardware, was on the verge of bankruptcy. It was $300,000 in debt. The bank was foreclosing on the property, and on the family home, which was tied to the business loan. They were about to lose everything. My father's face went white. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. And then a miracle, Ben said. An anonymous investor stepped in. A newly formed corporation based out of Texas bought out their entire debt. Every penny. They saved the store. They saved the house. This anonymous corporation has, for the last 10 years, been the sole creditor for Jensen's Hardware. They have been, in effect, the bank. They have been supporting them, letting them live in their house, letting them run their store, all without asking for a single payment. Until today, the shark lawyer, Mr. Barnes, looked confused. Your Honor, this is interesting. But what does it have to do with... Ben smiled. Your Honor, he said, we are here today to discuss my client's countersuit. She is not just defending, she is collecting. This is the paperwork for that corporation, Apex Logistics. And as I am sure you know, the sole owner and CEO of Apex Logistics is my client, Miss Sarah Jensen. The room was silent. I could hear my mother gasp for air. My father, he looked like he had been turned to stone. For 10 years, Ben said, my client has been the anonymous investor. She has quite literally been supporting them. She owns their debt. The total amount, with interest, comes to $4,800,000. Her parents are not her creditors. She is theirs. And today, she is calling in the loan. The shark lawyer, Mr. Barnes, looked at the proof. His face, it was a picture. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The color drained from his face. He looked at his clients. He looked at me. He looked at the judge. He knew. He leaned over to my parents. He hissed, his voice just loud enough for the first row to hear. They are not asking for the money. They are foreclosing. On the store. On the house. Right now. We just lost everything. The judge looked at my parents. Her face was like granite. Mr. and Mrs. Jensen, she said. Your claim for $5 million is not just frivolous. It is an act of breathtaking fraud. It is dismissed. With prejudice. Mr. Stone, your countersuit for collection and foreclosure is granted. In full, it was over. I owned their debt. I owned their house. I owned their store. I owned them. I stood up. I did not look at my parents. I did not look at their lawyer. I just looked at the judge. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. I walked out of the courtroom. As I passed my parents, my mother grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. Sarah, please, she whispered. Her face was a mask of terror. You cannot do this. We will be homeless. Where will we go? We are your family. I stopped. I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her face. I do not know, I said. My voice was quiet, but I am sure you will figure it out. After all you have to do is survive on your own. I pulled my arm away, and I walked out of the courthouse into the bright, clear, open air. I had finally balanced the budget.